It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to the Krypton Report.
Welcome to the Krypton Report, the All Things Kryptonian podcast, where we talk about anything relating to Superman, Supergirl, Krypton, DC Comics, and TV, movies, video games, comics. I am your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue, the Man of Tomorrow. Welcome to the Krypton Report. On today's episode is the long-awaited, amazing episode that everybody has been looking forward to. It's been a long time coming because of life, travel, distance. But today, James and I are joined by those amazing guys from The Last Sons, Connor and Ray. And we're going to talk All-Star Superman, the movie. So welcome, everybody.
Hey, how you going, Tyler? How you going, James? Always fun to be here. Looking forward to this chat. It should be be good.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched on my own.
Yeah, I watched it back when we were going to record, and then I took detailed notes. And then, we've been trying to get together. I mean, you guys are in Australia. For any listeners who don't know and aren't picking up on the accents, just think maybe they're just Americans trying to be funny. No, we're not that funny.
Yeah, I could try an American accent.
Let's not.
It's so weird when people say like American accent, and I'm like, oh yeah. But then you hear it and you're like, oh yeah. But then, like, it's just funny to me always because, other countries have like regional accents, but I feel like America is just kind of full of like the idea of the regional accent. You have like the southerner or like the northern, like New York, Boston, the deep south, and
I'd say my favorite. My favorite would either be Boston or I think people from the Bronx. I always have a little laugh at that. They're fun.
So it's like, oh, there's a variation in the quote unquote American accent. But yeah, All-Star Superman the movie. It's interesting because like you guys reviewed the book last year, was it? I can't keep track of time, to be honest.
Yeah, we did it last year because COVID was hitting here, and we were both in lockdown, so we thought, let's do All-Star over the course of a couple of months, and I think we ended up totaling about 14 hours of talking about that book. So, and you guys did it as well, didn't you, the book?
Yep,
I haven't listened yet because I had spent so much time talking about the book and reading about the book that I'm not quite ready to jump into another analysis yet, but I will listen to it one day.
That's fine. Yeah, we did it this year, and the idea is, we broke it up some, and we're talking about it, and then we're going to build up to doing this crossover.
Yeah.
Since you guys did the book, and we were doing the book. Yeah, it's such a interesting, because, like, we won't go into any deep dives. If anybody wants our opinions on that, they can dive into our episodes. But I like it, but I'm not in love with it. It's like this great Superman story that so many people seem to worship at the altar of Superman. Like it's the end all greatest Superman story there is.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Because when I reread it, I literally think it's the greatest comic ever written. I think it's, the best the genre has to offer, and it's my second favorite book of all time. But before this, and even now, I don't think it should be regarded as the Superman Bible, as it were. I think because this is really a point in Superman history where he's older, he's wiser, and people expect everything to be like All-Star Superman, and it's just. I don't know. I think it's kind of like The Dark Knight Returns in a way. It's like a lot of writers try to emulate the feeling and stuff, and they don't pull it off, and it's kind of obnoxious as well. I don't know if that's what you were thinking too.
No, I totally. It almost becomes one of those where so many people love it and hate other things because they're not this.
Yes,
you start to not like the source. Because you're tired of hearing about this or that should be.
Yeah.
I
think you're absolutely right there, Tyler. I think because I kind of agree with both of you in the fact that it is a remarkable piece of comic book writing and storytelling, but I think it's unfair to for people to hold it up and expect that sort of stuff from other stories. Exactly, kind of what you're saying. It's its own thing, really. It's a very particular story in itself. So
absolutely,
for when you try to emulate it, I think that's obviously where you fall flat. But to try and live up to it and maybe replicate that, I don't think it's the way to go. But having said that, it's a fantastic story. I mean, yeah, take nothing away from it. But I can understand what you say, that you start to kind of get a little bitter towards it because people are holding it up so high, in such high regard, and they just refuse to really accept anything else. And I think that's a bit unfair.
That's exactly what happened to me. I became jaded towards All-Star Superman until we reread it, and then I fell in love with it again. Because it's that good. But I was jaded towards it for a few years because people would always bring it up as to this comic sucks, this movie sucks because this is how you should do the character. And they post a picture of All-Star Superman, and I wanted to tear my hair out.
So rolling their eyes, going, "Oh, here we go."
It's the same effect with Superman the movie, except I don't think Superman the movie is as good. So I'm still kind of jaded towards that. But
you know what's funny about Superman the movie, and I agree with what you're saying, is I really like it up until about the third act. And after I think right around the part where he puts the kryptonite around Superman and Superman's got to escape, I'm just kind of like, after this part, I'm not really as into it as I should be. And it's supposed to be the big climactic latter third act part, and I'm just not into it as much.
I mean, I like how the final confrontation is him sort of preventing a natural disaster as an idea, but I agree. I mean, it's even earlier in the movie for me where I kind of lose it, I mean, I guess we should tell people we did Superman the movie together.
Yeah, we did.
Episode 10 of Last Sons of Krypton, and then we hopped over here to do part 2 of it, so you guys should go check that out. And I will be talking about it again soon. I'm
At least it's been a while.
Well, it actually hasn't, because I rewatched it when Richard Donner died, and I didn't enjoy it.
I watched Superman 2 when he died.
Yeah, that was probably a better
Richard Donner cut. I talked in my head about it, but
because I didn't enjoy it, and now I'm on this podcast that a friend of mine is doing, a film podcast, and he's like, I kind of want to do horror or something, but he's like, no, you do Superman, let's do Superman. So we're doing Superman 1, 2, Returns, and Man of Steel. I'm like, okay, sure. And then I realized I have to watch Superman 1 again, and I've been putting it off. The others, I'm fine, but I've just... Yeah, sorry, I said no tangents, and there we go.
I think it's a relevant tangent because so many times with this character, especially, it gets pinholed by fans. Like, this is the version that can only be this version.
Not my Superman is a phrase I've seen a lot.
And that's live action. Biggest gatekeepers out there are the
absolutely,
And to me, it gets old of the not my Superman or whatever. And also, I mean, we've talked about this before because a good friend of the show's who's been on a couple times, he's been reading comics chronologically. And he's talked about how at the time Superman the movie was made, it did not even reflect, the comics did not reflect the on-screen Superman.
Absolutely. I mean, that movie was kind of like a high-budget version of the George Reeves show, if anything.
The Clark Kent is a complete creation of the movie team compared to what was being done in the comics. And you think about how that has stayed with the character since then. Yeah. Because movies are the mass media version of everything that the masses will consume.
Yeah. Yeah. It's people have really selective memories of Superman, and Superman's had so many different eras and incarnations. Look at Golden Age and Silver Age. night and day. They're completely different.
And I think that's this story, right? Is just it calls back to some Silver Age stuff. And if you're not as tapped in with that vibe, I don't think the story vibes as well for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a conversation that's come up a lot, is, this story with new readers, because for some people it really seems to connect even though they don't know anything about Silver Age Superman, but for some people it doesn't connect, but then when they try it after having experienced those sort of Silver Age stories, it connects with them more. So it's a really weird book, I think.
I personally, one thing about me is I'm not a huge Bizarro fan. I'm not a huge Bizarro World fan at all. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of Bizarro just being a failed clone experiment, kind of one-off. But when you do stories with lots of Bizarros, multiple Bizarros,
Bizarro.
I don't want to read it.
When we got this chapter.
I just don't want to read it. I'm just no, I can't.
It's funny because
his brain just rejects it.
Ray and I were like absolutely glowing about those Bizarro chapters.
Yeah.
I
guess I really liked what those chapters represented, though.
See, I can get behind the idea of what they represented. I understand, but it's just, and this is, for all the people listening, this is how you talk about stuff and debate and communicate, even when you don't agree. Like, you just have fun and talk. Like
exactly.
That's we don't all have to agree.
No, exactly.
Exactly. Have our own,
Did you guys not find Batman getting shot by his parents funny? Because I thought that was the funniest thing ever. But
yes, it was
Bizarro Batman
in a very dark way. Yes.
Oh yeah, it was very dark humor. But
so I'm gonna go around here and I'm gonna ask everybody real quick, just off the top of your head, answer.
We lost Ray
quickly. Did we?
I think so.
Yeah, we did. Okay, so I'll just keep talking and hopefully he'll bounce back on.
All right.
This is what happens with the interwebs. We'll go Connor first. I'll say this. Which version do you prefer, movie or book? Just go.
Of All-Star?
Yep.
Book times a million.
Okay, James.
Book.
See, and now I would go book, but there are some things I liked in the movie, just thinking about the story. And I honestly don't know which one I would prefer. If I had to Tyler, you can only digest, so much of All-Star because of the Bizarro thing. And we'll get more into it. So Ray, are you back with us, buddy?
I am. Yep. Sorry, my browser just carked it, but it's back.
That's cool. That's what happened. As long as at least one of us is still going, we should be fine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So Ray, which version of All-Star, just real quick, without diving too much detail, do you prefer book or movie?
Book. Yeah.
See, we're pretty well consensus, and reason why I ask is, one, just for curiosity, but two, I think that this should have been one of those films that they split into two movies.
Interesting.
This came out before The Dark Knight Returns, and I'm wondering if they learned their lesson with this.
Yeah.
We've had technically only really two stories split into two movies, being Long Halloween and Dark Knight Returns.
And two they should have, being Superman Day and this.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, they redid Superman Doomsday, but they were still kind of distinctive stories. But this should have been split too, because I feel like for the people who love the book, the movie doesn't do it justice, and you lose certain elements that are explored in the book. And I think it's one they might need to come back around to and find a new spin or way in to redo it as two films.
Yeah. It's funny because Ray and I had this conversation last night when we were recording. I'm like, hey, Ray, don't you think it should have been two parts? Because we watched it recently.
Yeah.
I was moaning that, they've done two parts since then, and I'm like, this really should have gone two parts.
So, yeah, I mean, the comic book just basically it just has a greater canvas, and if you were to come up to me and say, you know, here's a whole pie, or do you want, you know, half a pie? What will you have? Of course, I'll get the whole pie.
Yeah.
So the comic book, it fills everything out. That's not to say that the TV, the animated feature is bad.
It's good. It's impressive.
I think it's pretty good, but it doesn't.
It's very concise in the story it tells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the bits that it takes.
Yes, exactly.
The artwork is great. I mean, doing an animated version of Frank Quietly's art, it works.
Yes.
So let's some quick background notes here. Came out in 2011. It's an hour and 16 minutes. It's directed by Sam Liu, who's done multiple of these DC films.
In 8 minutes.
Yeah. It's voiced by James. Superman's voiced by James. Is it Denton? I believe is how you say it. Lois is Christina Hendricks. And the part that got me that I didn't realize, it was written and adapted by Dwayne McDuffie shortly before he died.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that was the part that I was like, oh, wow. Wow. Like, so revisiting this film, having had more history with Dwayne McDuffie, I kind of kept that in my mind about, like James just said, he did a good job of telling the story that they chose to tell from the source material.
Yeah.
And for those listening, Dwayne McDuffie, prolific comic book writer, one of the founders of Milestone Comics. I've actually started on my DC Infinite rereading his original run of Icon.
Nice.
Okay.
I found it.
That's
I found
one
it
I've been wanting to check out myself as well.
I found it really compelling because I found, not to go too tangential, but you know, some comics from the 90s or whatever I felt were paced weird because they were so dense with, one thing I always hated about a lot of 90s comics was you're reading, say, Superman. You get to the end and it's like, for the rest of this story, get Superman, Man of Tomorrow, issue blah.
The dreaded triangle era.
Right. And I'm just like, I hated that. And I was telling that to my wife the other day, especially like reading stories on the app because it doesn't follow the triangle. It just follows the book. So if you're, you get to the end of an issue of Superman and, the next issue is Superman, Man of Tomorrow, but the app links you to just the next issue of Superman. And I'm just like, I hate this. So it never felt like you were getting a full story, but reading Icon, I mean, I would get to the end and just keep going because it was just so well done.
Nice.
There's some people out there, God bless them, put the Triangle era into a chronological read. Post-crisis.
I would love that.
Because, trying to read, go looking up on wikis and stuff, okay, exactly which issue is next it's a nightmare. Sure, it works for the time, but for posterity,
Yeah, for sales and collections makes sense, but in the age of reading the digital comic, the app needs to step up their game.
Yeah.
So what do you think, first of all, of the voice acting of Superman?
I loved it. I thought it was really good.
I thought it was pretty solid as him. I know a fair few people have voiced Superman, so I'm not sure how he kind of gauges against all the others, but I had no problems with it.
I think, my opinion, I've done a podcast where in one day I got to talk to 2 Superman voice actors. That was awesome.
Nice. Yeah,
and,
wow.
We did, and in between talking about the voices of Superman, and I think he did well. This is his one-off, and it's not on the ladder bad side, but it's not in my top 5. So
I think he did.
Who's your favorite?
Okay, so here's what I realized. Because I feel like when you say that, it always comes down to Tim Daly or George Newbern.
Okay, yeah.
And what I've realized is it's George Newbern because of the dialogue that George Newbern gets to deliver. Some of my favorite animated stuff has come from him voicing. Examples, the Superman and Shazam, the Return of Black Adam short.
Yeah.
He has some great lines that I love.
Yeah.
He voices it for Superman versus the Elite, which is some great dialogue. And then, of course, he gets the Destroyer episode of Justice League Unlimited. And he gets the For the Man Who Has Everything episode, which are just some of the best lines and episodes of the character in animation. So he wins. That's where I've come to.
Okay.
I think...
What do you reckon... Sorry, Connor.
I was just going to say, like, I think this... I don't know if the other Superman voice actors could have done this version of Superman.
And that's the other big point.
Yeah.
I feel like you have an actor who can voice Superman for the... Like, you get them... Kind of like, okay, back to The Dark Knight Returns. I think Peter Weller did a good job in that, but I would not want a Peter Weller for, like, Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
I would say... You look at Peter Weller and Batman there. But no, but it's fantastic. Justice.
Yeah, Bruce Greenwood. If you didn't have Kevin Conroy and you were like, we need Batman, Bruce Greenwood is where I go.
Yeah.
So you reckon James Denton, right? He,
I believe so.
It was just a one-off, just because of his particular style of voicings.
It was also, I think, just the way they were doing the movies at the time. They would just, bring in a cast, do this one movie, and that was it.
Okay, yeah.
Now I think we have sequels and
multiple contract
things.
Yeah.
So you don't see the one-offs as much, but you still get them.
Okay.
I guess I should put in a disclaimer here. When I watched this, because I've seen this movie a lot, I watched this. This was my second time watching it with the commentary with Bruce Timm and Grant Morrison.
Oh,
so
nice.
That's how I watched it for this podcast. And they did comment how Bruce Timm commented how like James Denton was like a really gentle sounding Superman, which is what he wanted. In fact, they had to sort of egg him on to be more aggressive in some scenes.
Oh, wow.
And I feel like when you do these kind of contained Elseworlds movie versions, you want to put a little bit of a staple mark on the character and on your voice acting of the character. So there's like that certain kind of idea, like this Superman for this movie should be this way. And then that's where you kind of find your actor.
Yeah, well, I mean, Superman or experience, a much stronger what happened. So he really has like nothing to be afraid of, and he never really did prior to he's like a Silver Age Superman, and Superman is like immensely powerful.
Yeah.
Just the way people say anyways. But so I mean just being gentle around everything, that's the only way he can be.
Yeah.
Otherwise everybody's in trouble.
Mm-hmm. The Grant Morrison was talking about that. He didn't deliberately mean to like sort of make it specifically Silver Age, but most of his inspiration was from the Silver and Bronze Age because, or the 50s and 60s, because apparently that was like the most popular Superman was. That's the most popular he's been was in those decades, and he thinks it's because all those stories deal with kind of what it means to sort of, well, not what it means to be human, but like they're all sort of human problems and stuff. Mm-hmm. Dealing, but like on the sort of grand scale, where like Superman will turn into a lion or something, but it always has like these emotional punchlines, as it were, instead of punching the bad guy,
Right.
And so I just thought I thought I'd bring that up now because I might bring up. I kind of noted what was interesting that Grant said throughout the commentary as well.
That's interesting. I mean, that is interesting, and it's also we all grow up kind of with our own Superman and kind of carry that with us.
Yeah,
that's why you have people who are so Christopher Reeve as their Superman because that's what they grew up with and was their foundation. And then, you have a generation who George was the building of their foundation. So I just want to throw out that most of the comments that I have in this is going to be directed more towards the movie and not to the story as a whole, because we've already talked about the book, So,
yeah, for sure.
So what I have here is that the first, and I did some like timestamps, is like the first 9 minutes comes from the first book. And it's done very well of adapting almost straight the first book.
Yeah.
And then it's, minutes 10 through 19 is book 2. And then what it does is it skips to Lex's trial from book 5 and then makes its way kind of back towards book 3. And I just think it's interesting if you're watching the film and you're like looking at the book, how it changes the chronology and moves forward, but it still works. And then I put, just as I went on here, book 3 ends at 30 minutes and 19 seconds.
Right.
And think about, like we've already discussed, like it's only a 76-minute movie.
Yeah.
And it completely takes out book 4.
Yeah. Book 4, book 6, book 7, book 8.
Yep.
Oh, wait, no, it keeps book 8. No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it does. No,
nope,
it doesn't. It keeps book 9.
I have it takes out book 3, 4, 6, 7, 8,
10.
part of 10. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Connor and I were talking about this as well the other night, just how they've kind of manipulated the original story, so to speak, but they kind of turned it into a
traditional
linear,
movie format.
Yeah. And actually, and again, hats off, they do it really well.
Yeah.
Because if you read the books again, I'll just briefly talk about that. They read and you come off them, you experience them totally different than say if you watch a movie, or an episode. So they've really adapted it into a feature format very successfully, and of course they've had to cut things off. But it's interesting that you've done that timestamp, Tyler, and how it kind of figures out. But I guess that is a blueprint of how they get the chronology and just the story flowing really well.
Yeah.
And, I think optimally, if you were going to adapt this, I think the way that this book is written, this would be a really cool mini-series movie type thing. 12 episodes, each one of the chapters in the book, because of how the book, it has an overarching story.
Mm-hmm.
But then each chapter, like you go on like these adventures that are some are more out there. Like some parts in the book, you have, and my book's not in front of me, where it ends and the next one picks up real tightly next to it. Yeah. And then you have one that like the next one kind of picks up in its own space a little bit later. Especially in the chapter where you get where he makes the pocket universe.
Yeah.
And that gets really heavy meta in it. And that's, out of the film. So let's see, I'm trying to get back to my notes here. But I do like what they've done. Like it is very sci-fi and Elseworlds. Because, we have the whole Superman aura thing, the bioelectricity.
Yeah.
That was cool to see.
It was.
Yeah. I liked how the animation, tried to, it didn't just copy paste Quitely's art, because obviously you can't just take comic panel art and make it, move. But they kept, the principles and stuff that Quitely was going for, like the soft sort of more gentle character features and stuff of the characters, especially Superman. And, it's funny, they did mention, Ray, because I remember one of the only quibbles I had with the series was there was a lot of blank backgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how we talked about how empty some things looked? But they did actually talk about that. It was deliberate.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and then like Bruce Timm was like trying to adapt that into the movie as well, which is funny. So
very interesting.
Yeah, sorry, my notes are like half about the movie and half about the book because I was listening to it with the commentary, and Grant said some stuff about the book that wasn't in the interview I used for our coverage. So
Banish him, Tyler.
That's fine. You know, no, that's fine because you're bringing light. Because in my notes as they go, it talks about how, all right, they're at this part from book 10, then they do this from book 11.
Yeah.
Then we pull back to book 9 for the circus. Kent to the Daily Planet, and then I have here, it says it talks about Bar L. There's like one quick mention thing. It says it skips to book 10. Superman pleads to Lex. Superman at the grave, like book 6, back to book 11.
Yeah.
And my one of my issues. This is kind of a book and movie thing. Is like if it's Bar L, and this is what I hate when writers don't. Like if it's L, why does it have a different symbol on their chest if they're supposed to be a member of the L family?
Well, I mean, yeah, but that I don't think they really did that whole L symbol thing until the Reeve movie, right?
I want to say yes. I want to say it didn't really make it the family because I think it was more. I think it was more of almost a Marlon Brando thing of like wanting,
the S to be the
be the family crest that he could have one as well.
Like I don't think I can't remember Kara's parents, but I don't think they had the same symbol as Jor-El. But I could be wrong.
You know, Connor, this is your house. You should know.
Well, actually, it's their house. Oh, wait, no, I know what you mean.
No,
yeah.
It's all of our house. It's all of our house. We're all in a safe space.
That's it.
Yeah, I guess, so it's something I really thought about. While Tyler looks, so apparently Lois Don't Go in the Room was inspired by Bluebeard, which I think is pretty funny.
Bluebeard?
Yeah, the pirate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about the wives.
Yeah, but it has a happy ending as opposed to a horrible one.
Oh, okay.
And then the Red Sun Solaris thing is interesting.
Yeah, so when they first mentioned Solaris because there was some scenes in the movie where I opened up the book for comparison, and they mentioned Solaris. When Lois, or I can't remember if it's Lois, sees the visions of the future descendants talking to Superman and warning him about the mad tyrant Solaris in the book. They warned them that in the movie it's the mad god Darkseid instead of Solaris. So Solaris gets no foreshadowing in the movie, which is why I think Superman kills him as opposed to the book where he doesn't, because Solaris has been set up to be established in the future.
Okay.
Right. I'm not sure if that's why they killed Solaris, but that it winds up that way.
Another big thing about this one was they're pretty much like take out most all of Dr. Quantum story.
Yeah.
Like he's at the little bit at the beginning and then he's at the very end.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has a very big part in the book.
And that's it. Like his whole story for everything is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the little bits that we do get of him, though, I mean, were kind of good and very true to the book. And he looked he looked to me very Frank Quietly, very well done. So, yeah.
Yeah. There was, I remember around this part they were talking about how Grant was saying, I hope people like movies like this again, and Bruce Timm is like, we showed Batman Under the Red Hood, and every time there was blood or violence, people would cheer.
Oh, wow.
It's like, I mean, I remember when Red Hood came out, it was a novelty that it was like M.
Yeah.
Oh.
But for me, it's just surreal that like the violence is what's important when you're watching
a
movie like that. Like, is it that important that Batman's violent?
Yeah. I can never understand that.
Like, I mean, I get violence adding to it, but literally cheering for it is a bit weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into the whole realm of, like, as well, people up in arms that something's not R-rated or not. Like,
yeah. The whole Moon Knight thing.
Or anything, like, in general, that they feel, even Batman as well.
Yeah. Sorry if that feels like derailing, but I'm literally going through my notes in order.
No,
you're good. No, because I get it, because there is a, like, recently I watched I was going through, I guess it was a special feature or something. It was attached to Superman 4. It was an interview with Chris, and it was talking about his Superman, and it's a great interview because he talks about that one of the great characters about Superman is that he's a friend, and what that means to be a friend, what it means like in the culture of America, and what that puts on. And some people just look at that as like a weakness or a boringness to the story.
Yeah,
but you need that type of character, that type of story, so it shows the difference when you get to the Batman character that struggles with the violence and everything. And sometimes I just enjoy watching. Like, I understand what Grant's trying to say in his comment about the movie, but at the same time, I feel like with this one particular, there's stuff in it, like the Celestial that you were just talking about, that makes it feel a little disjointed. Like they're trying to do a great job of carving out this direct storyline from the source material, but even the source material is not always the most tight-knit source, like story. There's things that you might miss on your first read that alludes to, that you have to go back to. So...
Yeah. Well, you talk about violence. Everybody likes to see a big superpower battle.
Yeah.
I mean, Superman exchanging blows with some giant creature or powerful being, and trying to maintain the collateral damage while also. But it's only those type of villains that push Superman to that level. Otherwise, he tries to do other things by other means to stop. It's not a cycle of violence.
Yeah, that was the thing, because I think Under the Red Hood's a good movie. And it's like, if that was like the part people were cheering about, I'm like, but there's so much good stuff in this movie that's not the violence, like, so like it's everything. I feel like just everything's better when it has meaning behind it. Like when the violence is justified, which it was in Red Hood. But
I mean that story, like, I understand the violence in certain stories, but I don't need to cheer. I think the only time I ever cheer for violence is more of like when it's over the top, tongue in cheek. Like, it's supposed to be so like when you're like the movie Kick-Ass. Like it's so over the top, and it's so much that you're just like, it's got a dark humor to it at the same time. But I understand when it's just supposed to be like the normal violence that you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it just ties in, I think, as well, like, that whole conversation they were having with Bruce Timm and Grant Morrison is people just kind of unwilling to accept a character that's good for whatever reason, that doesn't have any sort of darkness or ulterior motive to them. And that's something I don't understand either.
Nope, but, I'm completely with you.
Yeah,
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, so,
And, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about, and I think I agree. I think they were talking about, the importance of not having the Kents die, having Ma and Pa live. is the fact that Superman doesn't have to be birthed from tragedy. Like, he doesn't have to become Superman because of a tragedy. He just does it because he has the ability to, and it's the right thing.
I mean, the thing with when the Kents died earlier, though, it's not like that was an Uncle Ben moment. They just died naturally. Well,
I mean, it's always how they kind of use it with Jonathan Kent. Was like it was the catalyst for him to go off into the world because, you have the great line in Superman the movie about all these powers and I couldn't even save him.
Yeah.
In the old, like Kirk Allen, George Reeves, and the comics, they just killed them off screen at the beginning. Like, and then the Kents passed away, and he moved to the city.
Yeah,
that was it.
So I get where that guy's coming from, but I don't necessarily agree. I don't think the Kents being alive or dead is a defining thing because it's not like Batman's parents getting shot down. It's again, like in the Silver Age, he was Superboy while they were alive,
Yeah, it's
so
yeah.
Well, I also think that Superman learned the same lesson about how to save everybody, no matter how ours are, and it doesn't have to be because about that. I mean, specifically in Man of Steel, his dad, respect Dad's decision and let him die, but that wasn't a catalyst to go on and become Superman.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been the catalyst, honestly, like outside of, Superman the movie. But even then he had to go on self-discovery before it sort of happened.
Right.
So, I'm sure some listeners who are familiar with, I have a real bone to pick with the Kents sometimes. But it's more, I think, like, I don't know. It's just such a weird...
Yeah.
It's like if the Kents aren't alive, people freak out.
Right. It's just that lesson, that you can't save everybody, no matter power.
Yeah.
I mean, some people just find it more impactful that way. They did it just fine in Lois and Clark. One of the first episodes there where Lex was testing him, and Brett can't be everywhere. You can't save everybody. And, he just has to learn that and talk parents, but realize do can't.
Yeah,
I guess one thing with the Kents is I like them being alive just because it's different than every other superhero. Like now, every superhero has like their parents murdered, killed, or at least one of them are dead. That just having a superhero like Superman who still has their parents, it just changes up the whole dynamic of everything.
It does, but I think you could do that better with other heroes that are younger. For me, my personal taste is like, I don't know, for me, Superman's story speaks to me more if like his parents died of natural causes because it's just like life,
Yeah, his parents dying of natural causes is the best way to go, just because that is like life.
The parent they're not going to be around forever. I mean, sometimes they look like 80 when they adopt him. So,
yeah, I'm not a fan of that part either.
Yeah, I will say Lois and Clark is my favorite version of the Kents. They're very charming in that show.
Yeah, I guess regardless also of Superman's longevity, he, like anyone else, is going to have to, accept that fact, like you say, that your parents, they're not going to be around forever. I mean, like Superman's got that particular thing to deal with as a whole, with the human race. But I guess it kind of brings him down a bit, like in the sense, brings him down to earth that he, like anyone else, his parents, time moves on and he's got to kind of live with that.
Yeah, speaking of parents, I really liked visiting his father. It's not saying that it was anything like what happened. I mean, it's probably stayed natural because he's a much older character. Well, but his mother in here, it's like the book, I think a little different here, but
she was
you look a bit thin. Are you eating enough? Mom, I'm Superman. Mother always knows.
No, I love that line.
That's an awesome line.
That's great, yeah.
it was so good that I didn't mind the fact that she was alive in this. And even in the book, like when Pa Kent died, it wasn't from any sort of unnatural thing. He just had a heart attack. And Superman was doing Superman stuff at that point. He was already a superhero. So I think it was handled well in the book.
Yeah. I like that he gets to be in the Superman.
Yeah.
So that way he gets to spend the last moments with his father that didn't get that chance to.
That was a nice
doing
moment.
Saving the day.
Yeah.
Now, with that, hold that thought with that one here. Let me ask you guys, do you consider this story and movie as a whole a Death of Superman story?
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, you know, James and I have talked about how it seems like so many times the only stories that people cling to like about Superman is when he dies. And I've always taken this as just another kind of Death of Superman story. But then I had someone point out to me that, you know, I always kind of looked at it as at the end of the story, Superman's up in the sun. You know, Lois talking about he's up in the sun fixing the sun. Yeah. And I always thought that was kind of more along the lines of her rationale, her thought process. But then, you know, someone pointed out that there's another story that features a like golden looking Superman.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of the story, there's like the golden Superman. That's actually the Superman that was in the sun back. And I was like, I don't know why I never thought of that or interpreted it that way.
Yeah, Grant Morrison, 1 million.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like, it's funny because I remember when Ray and I covered this was one of the gaps as well. Like, what was the exact sort of intention here? Like, we know about DC 1 million, but that could be like an Easter egg type, you know? So it's like, is he dead? And Grant Morrison actually talks about it in the commentary, which I'm like, oh, cool. And Morrison says he pretty much wrote it as a death. Like, he wrote it as Superman dies, essentially, but it's like a mythic death. So, you know, he has like a mythical...
That's how I always interpreted it, is this is just another Death of Superman. And it was one of the things that kind of bugged me, like why people hold this so high, is I'm like, once again, we're at Superman's death, and that's the only story that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like death in quotations because again, in the book as well, you know, I keep forgetting how to pronounce it, but like it's what's that word, Ray? You know, apotheosis ascension.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know, when someone becomes like a higher being, a god, well, basically, it's a death in the sense that he'll stop being the Superman we know, and he'll ascend
he goes
to this.
He'll ascend to
a different kind of plane of existence.
He returns as an electric Superman. What?
You know, so sure, he's there fixing the sun, but he's fundamentally not going to be the same Superman that we've just read about, and not in a sinister way, but in like, you know, just a sort of happens way. And again, like one of the things he was going for with the ending is it's a mythic death in the sense that like people will tell stories about the man fixing the sun and stuff, and he'll live on like that, and his legacy of heirs as well. You know, he might come back eventually, he might not, but it's not like, you know, how King Arthur's supposed to come back from Avalon, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like that. So it's interesting. There's heaps of ways you can look at it.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Tyler, as well, I think to an extent I did see it like that, but do you guys remember the movie Powder? Do you ever watch that?
Yeah, vaguely. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but
Okay, that's how I kind of...
years.
Yeah, that's how I kind of likened it to, about this guy, essentially kind of, it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
In this movie, this guy is like an albino, but he's got these weird powers, and he does die, but he lives on in a different form, like in energy. And it's kind of like, that's how I kind of see it with Superman here. Yeah, he's not dead. His energy is still around, but he's doing something.
I mean, as we're talking, I can look at like, he went to the sun, became part of the sun, and then his light shines down on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I didn't really answer your question, Tyler, about...
No.
I don't know.
Fine.
Like,
it's
it's a Death of Superman story, but that's like saying, the famous King Arthur legend, Morte Arthur. That's just like saying, oh, it's King Arthur's death story. There's so much more to it than just
there's so much more to
a death story. It's not just about Superman's death. It's about his life. It's about who he is. It's about his relationships and this sort of cycle he goes through. And it leads up to his death, and it all builds up to its death, and it's all leading up to it. But it's not just the death. There's so much more.
Yeah.
It's not Death of Superman, where that book is literally about him just dying.
Or other stories as well, similar to, I kind of think of it, say like the Silver Surfer Requiem, which is all about him dying, and it leads up to his death. But I put All-Star Superman in a different category. Essentially, it kind of does that, but there's just so much more than that act at the end where he does kind of die and change. It's way more than that.
Dude, that is a good take. That's. I feel like this is definitely one of those stories. The more you read it, and especially if you read it, wait a couple years, go back to it, you get more out of it, and because you as a person grow and look at it differently. And I mean, Grant Morrison does write on a higher level of thinking sometimes, and I do think that sometimes it's too high. It takes us all a little bit of time to catch up.
Well, he was probably too high.
Right use of words. No,
definitely. And like, because reading that interview, there's so much thought put into like every page of this book, and there's something I never would have picked up on if I hadn't read that interview, like the weird Buddhism / Renaissance symbolism in like one of the pages or something. I'm like, I would never have picked up on that unless I had that specific knowledge, So it's it's definitely a book you can go back to, I think, and get new things out of, which is one of the reasons I love it. Because first time I read it, second time I read it, I got completely different things from it. The first time I read it, I took it as it was. I didn't sort of see the picture and the meaning behind it. Not that you have to. You can take it as it is, as the sort of story of Superman's adventures while he's dying. But the second time reading it, I started to notice the sort of cycle he was going for, and just like the way all the different seemingly unrelated parts like Bizarro were actually crucial to the main story, and reflecting, Superman's state of mind and what is actually happening. So again, we're talking about the book and not the movie, but
No, it's fine because, the book is of the movie, and there's so much that gets cut out. And like, a lot of the Jimmy Olsen, with his whole thing about his whole arc is gone, and like
he's pretty much a cameo now.
And
I liked his little bit though. That was funny at the beginning with Steve Lombard. Like, you going undercover like something or something like that. He goes, no. Oh, that was funny.
It is funny, but I just, thinking back on like Jimmy's whole journey it's massive in the book.
It is,
He gets a lot to do,
And the one thing I really criticize in a way about All-Star Superman is I don't like the relationship between Clark and Lois in All-Star Superman.
It's an interesting talking point, that's for sure. She's not quite. There's a few things.
We won't go down the rabbit hole, but it's much like I don't think Margot Kidder is a great Lois Lane in the sense that her and Clark's relationship is horrible in the movies. So I'll argue that anybody can message me and we can talk about that. But that whole relationship in the films is horrible. So my thought is this: with All-Star Superman the movie, is it a well enough done that you feel that it's well enough. It's done well enough that you can say this is the movie of the book, or is you're like, this is a take off the book. Like if you're talking with someone and they're reading the book and they find out they're a movie, how would you kind of suggest or talk to them about it? Like the movie's something of its own, because I always hate that. Like, oh well, the movie's its own thing and the book's its own thing. I'm not always a huge fan of that idea because sometimes I want to see the book brought to life.
Yeah.
Or in animation or whatever. So how would you approach somebody with the movie compared to the book? Connor, you go first, then we'll do Ray, and then James.
So is this someone who hasn't seen the movie or read the book? Or?
Right. They're coming to the property new.
Yeah, I would say read the book. I would say the movie does it's impressive how it manages to make a movie out of the book, but it's really the Diet Coke version of the book. And for me, it cuts out stuff that's absolutely crucial. Like everything in the book for me is crucial. It all fits together in one big picture, and the movie just doesn't have that. And I think it can feel a bit disjointed. You know, it's like, I don't know. It's for me, it's just no real comparison. I think, as I said, I think the book is a masterpiece, and the movie's just good. You know, that's the sort of difference. So, that's my answer.
How would you do, Ray?
Yeah, it's interesting. I might go about it differently than Connor's. I would say, I would suggest to someone to actually watch it first, because it's a fine feature. It's really enjoyable. It does its thing, but then go and read the book because you're going to get so much more out of it. And then they might go back and rewatch the feature. You know what I mean? I feel it would be, and again, I don't want to sound as if I'm disparaging the feature because, again, I really enjoyed it. But I think if anyone that reads a book first and then watches the feature, I think you do get a little bit disappointed at the feature because it's not as well done as the book. So my mentality is, watch it first and be wowed by it, and then go read the book and then be even more wowed by that.
Plus, the feature has gorgeous music as well.
It does. Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, so, I think they're both, and unfortunately, Tyler, I think they're both one in its own thing. Unfortunately, it is an adaptation of the book, but I think that you'll probably get different levels of enjoyment or different kinds of enjoyment from watching it and or from reading the book.
All right, James?
I mean, so if you've never seen it, I mean, just like, I agree with Ray there. So when I saw it first, I got anime, and I bought the trade and I read the thing. So, it is a good movie. It tells a concise story. And it is well done, and you get some things in a movie that you don't get in a book. So they each add a little bit to it. But then, I'd say if you haven't done it before, the movie's only going to take 75 minutes of time.
Mm-hmm.
Book would potentially take more, depending on how fast you like to read. And I mean, when you're reading something like this, there's a lot to think about, and Frank Wild's art is fantastic. So there's a lot to take in. But like I said, like me, I watched it first, and I enjoyed it. Definitely got to want to pick up the trade and the story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would, enjoy the movie. It'll take less time, and then book, and you'll see how much more and how layered the storytelling is in the book. See how much that how much they cut out, but how much they were able to keep and take and tell a story. So, yeah, I think watch it first. It'll take less of time, and it'll give you back to it, and then yeah, jump into the book. Really see it expand.
You know, I'm with both of you because watching the movie first kind of introduces you, but I think if you read the book and you like the book, watching the movie just is going to let you down.
Yeah.
Because like you guys both stated, you guys really like the Bizarro stuff. That's completely omitted. And I think it's better to watch the movie, like the movie, read the book, really like the book, and then be like, man, I just wish the movie had been more like the book. But I think if you follow the book first and watch the movie, you're going to be upset because there's a lot that it doesn't have. And then it keeps a lot too. Like, I've stated before, I'm not a huge fan of the whole Samson and
really?
Atlas part, because what I didn't like about it, and this is why. What I don't like where it's placed in the story, because he just gives Lois her power suit, and then they do that whole thing, and then like her power suit diminishes. Like, I would have actually liked to see him and her do more together.
Like they undercut her day as
right.
Okay, yeah,
Superwoman.
Yeah, by inserting them there. That's why I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of this, like where it's at in the story plotting, because I would have liked more. I always feel like there's weight when you do a story where Lois is given Superman's powers and she learns what it's like to be him.
I want to point out, shout out to Alvin Schwartz, who literally quit writing Superman when they gave Superman's powers to Lois Lane. They took it seriously back then, these writers. So, yeah.
Wow.
You talk about like the stuff cut out, Bizarro things, stuff like that. Stuff you get in the book, chapter, or in most of the chapters, that only get a couple of lines of dialogue and be about is him trying to prepare the world for Superman.
Yeah.
And they only bring that up a couple of times, dialogue. But in the book, in each chapter, like Bizarro chapters, he passes off a lot of information and helps people. Like the Bizarro guy who's like normal Bizarro.
Zabaro?
He's like Bizarro.
Yeah.
Zabaro, yeah.
Yeah.
And you get him helping people and improving people's lives more in the book than you do them. But you just get a couple of dialogue referencing that idea, comparing the world. It's that.
I guess a good way to put some of it for me in comparing the two is, so I really love the imagery in the book and the movie of sort of Clark getting on the boat, Charon's kind of boat, and going into the underworld after he talks to Lex, how they walk under his cell, right?
Yeah.
And I really love that imagery. And in the book, it then goes, sort of a flashback with Park Kent, and then it really goes where Clark kind of quite literally is in the underworld with Bizarro and the red skies and everything. But then in the movie, you go from that imagery to book 9.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like you're missing a big, important chunk there thematically. So for me, it feels a bit like Frankenstein's monster. And I don't... I've watched this movie with people before, and there has been I have heard complaints that the movie, and this is from people who haven't read the book, that the movie's a bit patchy. Like it feels a bit patchy because it kind of jumps around, and I think that comes from sort of skipping all over the book. So I guess my kind of worry would be if people watch the movie and they just not interested enough to read the book afterwards. But that really varies from person to person. But for me, it's like, do you want people to enjoy the movie or the book? In my head, I think.
Well, I think you'd want them to enjoy either version.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I get what Connor's saying, because a lot of the deeper seated imagery and undermeaning is lost, I think, in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I think it feels a bit less complete just as a movie. Just as I said, just going from book 5 to book 9 in the movie. And again, I know it's because I've read the book beforehand, but I have read and seen other people sort of noticing it felt a bit all over the place, especially around that area where they did cut that big chunk out. So.
And like we said earlier, like the rearrangement of some of the Lex scenes of his trial and his conviction and all that.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts of just kind of wrapping up just our review of like the movie? And it's always hard to talk a movie when you're also talking about something that's a book.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts?
Connor?
Well, my other notes kind of pertain to the book, so I'll just ignore those and I'll just focus on the movie. It's a good. I think it's a good movie. I think it's far from perfect. And but it's good. It has really nice music. It's really well performed. The animation is really nice. I think it's one of the better DC movies. It's just it is obviously hard to separate from the book, but quality-wise, it's good quality. I think it's a good movie, So, yeah, I think as well. I mean, pretty much like Connor. I think it's a solid film. It's it is not the equivalent of the book. With other movies as well. It's not like up there as top tier, but it certainly is a solid kind of rendition. I think it pays enough respect to the book. I mean, we've been there and done that, haven't we? We've seen stuff where we kind of may have been up in arms that it actually doesn't adhere to source material. Oh, yeah.
And this is totally, this is totally respectful. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I'm not up in arms that they cut stuff out. I completely understand.
Oh, yeah.
Why they cut stuff out, because you have to adhere to the 85 minutes, and they kept the really what makes it work as a movie. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no. And so I would recommend this film to be seen. Like, if you're a Superman fan, you haven't seen it before, even if you have already read All Star, I think give it a go. I mean, you'll be pleasantly surprised how I think just how concise it is, and of course it misses out stuff. But I think it's a really good bit of animation.
James,
I definitely recommend them. Should definitely watch it, especially if you haven't had a chance to read the book first. It's a good introduction. It's a good movie. Doesn't take a lot of your time. Cast is well done. And just definitely watch it. It is a good film. Did a good job adapting it into the time they had, and do that, and then the book. Or if you read it, haven't seen, chance. It's not as good as the book. Most of the adaptations aren't as encompassing as a long form. All-Star is 12 issues, so it's a pretty thick book. there's a lot you can tell, and a lot that they shoved in visually in 76. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think you should definitely check it out. Watch it, then read the books. I think it'll enrich the book. It'll enrich it by just expanding upon the world you're introduced with the characters. And yeah, I just feel like you were saying, like with the adaptation process, if you were to can do it now, I think either a 2-part film or like a mini series, even an animated mini series could be neat.
That would be, they could nail it,
like streaming services, that's their thing, is like making something that's kind of different and special. So
that would be pretty awesome to see books done in long books like it's done on stream.
Yeah.
Like they just did the Long Halloween. If they would have done that in a 12, 13 episode animated miniseries, yeah,
it would have been interesting. It's definitely something that I think this property, maybe this property more so than some of the others that off the top of my head, could lend itself better to that because of how some of these stories end and begin.
Yeah.
All-Star would be very episodic.
It's, sometimes it has its beginning, middle, end, and it has a closure, and then sometimes it leads to the next issue. But
it would be difficult too. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it'd be difficult too, though, to do it because they've already done like half of it. You know what I mean?
But it's been over 10 years, and just thinking about,
it's just so faithful though what they've done here.
Yeah.
I can't imagine them remaking it. It's not like Superman Doomsday and Death of Superman,
Yeah, they certainly improved on that. I think they improved on Superman. They improved on Death with the one movie.
But it's very different to those, with All-Star, if you want a faithful adaptation, you're just going to be getting, I don't know.
This plus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
What they gave us was already, pretty faithful to the source material. They just had to strip it down and condense it to fit a certain time.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say my favorite moment in the movie is when he sets off with his robots to fight Solaris. It's not my favorite moment in the book, but I loved it in the book, but it's not my favorite in the book. In the movie, it's my favorite because I think the music is really awesome and everything. So
yeah, visually, and then it's the only time he actually gets mad.
Yeah.
Kills a Sun Eater, man.
Yes.
So, Connor, Ray, go ahead and just kind of, where can people find you online, listen to you? Connor, you go first, then Ray.
They can find me raving in the street like a lunatic.
Awesome. That's where I like to find
running
you.
around with my shirt off. No. So
ConnorsGoneMad.com. Check it out.
You can find me at Iron Fist Podcast on Twitter. I do an Iron Fist podcast called Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist Podcast. And you can also find me with Ray at Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. And on Twitter, it's at LSK Podcast. We just did the Spider-Man Superman team up, and then last night we recorded the Dr. Fate Superman animated series episode, which I really like because it has horror.
Hand of Fate.
Nice.
Yeah.
Similar to Connor, LSK Podcast. That's on Twitter, just for the Last Sons, the Superman stuff that Connor and I do. And just on Twitter as well. If you hit me up on at RayRayPod, REYREY pod, just happy to chat about anything comics, and that's where you can find links to the other shows that I do. RayRayPod's the way to go.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being here in our chat. We could probably keep going forever, but the children are stirring and they're giving me that "feed me, daddy" look in their face. So I don't.
No, thank you so much, Tyler and James. It's been great to be able to chat about this, and
it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's been a while. Glad to talk to you.
Yeah, and finally get there as well. Apologies.
It's always if we're gonna do something like this, we gotta do it together.
Yeah.
And it's just nice, like you said earlier, like getting the different, especially with a piece of writing. I think sometimes there's so much more that you can see in it, and having the other opinions of people. Yeah, you can get more out of the conversation by how you view it. So it makes it more fun and interesting, and can help you appreciate things more. Okay. But all right, good listeners, thanks for tuning in. Check out the movie if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while. Go back and watch it again. Go back and reread the book, and just see what your opinions of it have changed.
Totally.
The more I've read it, the more I like it.
It's a brilliant read, yeah.
And I appreciate things more and more, especially with just learning more of the history stuff that he tries to weave in there. So it's definitely something that it'll stand the test of time. I still agree that it's not the greatest Superman story ever written. I'm not sure what is, but
I was about to ask that, but then I realized that could be like a whole conversation as well. So.
Yeah, it's just, when people say, like, what's the best stories to read? And it's like, this is always like the top recommendation. And to me, this is not what I would recommend somebody to read, just like the best Superman story.
I think it's the best Superman story, but it wouldn't be on the top of my recommendation list.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the man who has everything, though, that's a different story.
And that's one we're going to get into later this year.
Ooh, very nice.
And discuss, because I read it years ago and was like, okay. And then I reread it recently and I was like, all right, I'm getting more out of this. So James and I are going to tackle that, I think, in December.
It's so good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of see where that goes. And that would be one that would be a very interesting like one-off movie to do.
You could make it a feature length, like as in like 85 minutes or whatever, I think, quite easily.
Yeah, you could.
I want to see more of Mongol's mind in that movie.
Yeah, the spin-off about Mongols for the Mongol who has everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Sitting on his throne.
Just to show, yeah.
Like Superman has this really complicated sort of dream about what he wants, and Mongol's just like, yeah, I've killed everyone.
Exactly.
Standing on a bed of skull.
Yeah.
Superman's is interesting because, like, in the animated version, the short that Bruce Timm did, like, there is layers of his two lives crashing.
Yeah.
So you have Krypton, you have Smallville, even his wife. She's supposed to be Kryptonian, but it looks like they mashed Lana and Lois together.
And that wasn't in the book, yeah.
And in the book, there's a little bit more to it. So that's why I'm like, I love it. And I think you could do like a 70-minute movie out of it and have some more to it, especially.
Have you two read Return to Krypton, the Silver Age story?
No.
I highly recommend that, as that heavily inspired for The Man Who Has Everything, and could almost be viewed as like a prequel, I guess, because his wife in the dream world is actually his love interest in that story. Okay. So it actually adds more for The Man Who Has Everything. So I can send you guys a link on Facebook if you want.
Yeah, because I'm about to do a kind of read on some Superman stuff, chronology.
Yeah.
Fun read through.
Yeah.
To kind of help fill in some of the gaps of just Silver Age, Bronze Age, because sometimes I dread the Diamond Era, but
yeah,
we'll get there. Well, let's get out of here and save the day, fellas.
All right.
Alrighty.
Look up in the sky.